Well, joining us now on the Al Jazeera News Hour is Thomas White, who's the Director of UNRWA Affairs in Gaza. UNRWA is the UN agency for Palestinian refugees, of course. Thomas White is joining us from Rafah. Thank you very much for being with us on Al Jazeera. As we heard there and saw, nowhere for people to go to for safety right now in Rafah. Just how concerned are you about an expanding Israeli military operation into Rafah, and how are you preparing for it?
There's a sense of enormous concern, fear in Rafah. In the last 48 hours, we've seen some very heavy airstrikes into Rafah. So people here are very concerned about what the future may bring and what it means if there's a large offensive here in Rafah. Essentially, we could see hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people on the move again, trying to flee the fighting. The second big issue for us is the humanitarian operation is based in Rafah. That's where we're supporting the rest of the Gaza Strip from right now, and it will become very difficult for us to continue the humanitarian operation here if there is an offensive in Rafah.
What sort of communications are you having at the moment with the Israelis? What are they telling you about their next moves?
So we have daily, hourly contact with the Israeli army, trying to coordinate safe access through Gaza for aid convoys and etc. They don't signal to us what their intentions are, but what we are watching very closely is this pattern of increased airstrikes into civilian areas and then these leaflet drops or announcements to the population to start moving. So that's what we're watching very closely right now.
And so how are you preparing for all of this? I mean, where would you move your operations to in case of a military offensive, a ground offensive on Rafah?
Reality is it's going to be very difficult to manage an aid operation if we have to move from Rafah. We are struggling to meet the demands of the people right now. If there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people on the move again, we just do not have the resources to support them. But also operationally, we will not be able to effectively or safely run operations from a city that is under assault from the Israeli army.
Thomas White, UNRWA has been working under the most difficult of circumstances and conditions in Gaza for the past 4 months. It's come under attack. Its personnel has been killed. It's also faced some very, very serious allegations recently. And some countries have suspended their funding to UNRWA amid these accusations by Israel that some of your employees were involved in the October 7th attacks. And just today, we've had Israel's finance minister say that he plans to cancel tax exemptions for UNRWA, saying that the state of Israel will not give tax benefits to what he called terrorist aids. What do you respond to that?
My response is we've got a job to do here in Gaza. There's an enormous humanitarian need, and UNRWA is central. And in the words of the Secretary General of the United Nations, UNRWA is the backbone for the humanitarian response right now. So here with the teams from UNRWA, other UN agencies and NGOs, we're focused on meeting the immediate needs of people here. Our agency, UNRWA, has taken very decisive action in terms of these allegations. They're being investigated right now. And we continue to have a dialogue with our funding partners to give them the confidence that they can restore funding to the agency, but most importantly, restore funding to the agency to avert an absolute crisis here. We've got 40% of the population who are at risk of famine. Defunding UNRWA now will precipitate that famine.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this. What a cancellation of the tax exemption for UNRWA would mean for your operations, and what does a suspension of some of this funding mean for you today, not just in Gaza, but in other countries where UNRWA is helping Palestinian refugees like Lebanon?
Just to give you a sense, in the last couple of months, we've provided 1.9 million health consultations. We're supporting over 1 million people who are living in UNRWA shelters. 20 million litres of water has been distributed. We're feeding 350,000 people. We are providing logistic support for the rest of the UN operation. You know, UNICEF can bring in vaccines to Gaza, but ultimately it's an UNRWA nurse that puts that into an arm of a child. And so all of that is at risk. You know, the humanitarian situation here, it's the worst I've seen. If you speak to experienced humanitarians, you know, such as Martin Griffiths, you know, it is the worst he's seen in over 50 years of humanitarian work. You know, it risks becoming a lot worse if this funding is not restored.
Why do you think UNRWA, the Israelis, are targeting UNRWA in this way? They keep saying that UNRWA is part of the problem and that it must be replaced once the war is over.
UNRWA's been under political attack for quite a while. You know, what I am focused on and what our teams here are focused on is, you know, making sure that children get an education, that people have access to healthcare. You know, we're enormously proud that a child in an UNRWA school in Gaza performs better than a child in the public or the private sector. That a woman here in Gaza, because of UNRWA's work, has health outcomes that are similar to Europe. Now, that's the value of UNRWA, because it is working on the human development of the people of Gaza. And of course, in times of crisis, you know, we are fundamental to ensuring that people can get enough food, water or healthcare.
Thank you for talking to us. Thomas White, Director of UNRWA Affairs in Gaza. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Pauline.